Interested in antique tools? Today at the House of Hacks, let's check out what I have loaded in the Jeep. Hi makers, builders, and do-it-yourselfers. Harley here. Over the Thanksgiving holiday, my wife and I took a road trip to California to visit my dad and stepmom. And while we were there, I spent a couple days with my dad kind of cleaning out, organizing his workshop. And in the process, he gave me a Jeep full of antique tools that he got from my granddad, his dad's workshop when my granddad passed away. It's been close to 10 years ago now. When he passed away, I got a lot of his tools, and I currently have them down in my workshop and use them on a regular basis. Over the years, he and my grandmother, for Christmas and birthday, would routinely give me tools for my own use. And it's rare that I work on a project that I don't use at least some of the tools that they give me. Many times, most of the tools I use were given to me by them. And so it's a cool legacy that they've passed down in this regard. My paternal grandfather was probably the one grandparent that I was closest to in terms of interests that we shared. He was a self-taught machinist and had quite an extensive workshop behind his house. He had a metal lathe that I now have and did quite a bit of machining on his own just for general projects around the house and cars and things like that. So it's quite an honor for me to be able to get some more of his tools and outfit my workshop a little bit more. Some of these things that I got are actually things that I want to refurbish and put on the shelf kind of as museum pieces almost, if you will. I won't be planning on using them. I also got a library of books all on machining that I'm looking forward to reading and learning more about machining. I wouldn't call myself a machinist by any stretch of the imagination, but I do have his metal lathe and would like to learn how to use it more effectively in projects and make more projects out of metal. So let's start unpacking. Okay, so this is the haul. I've got a table saw and a lathe, and these were purchased by my granddad in probably the mid-50s or so. They came as a set of 3. They're also that I've had for a while is a Jigsaw, and they're all kind of the same style. They're all Craftsman. They're kind of like an entry-level beginner Craftsman set for that time period. My plan with these is to kind of fix them up, clean the rust off of them. Haven't decided if I want to paint them or not, kind of get them back to more period colors. Most of the paint has kind of chipped off over the years. So I'm kind of up in the air on what I want to do with finish on these, but I do want to at least clean them up and mount them with probably some sort of, maybe an inexpensive drill or something just to make them turn as kind of a demonstration unit for those 3 units. The Jigsaw that I have down in the basement is probably the one that's in the roughest shape. It needs to be completely disassembled. It has more rust on it. It also has some wood parts that need to be remanufactured. So that's kind of a side project that I have for the winter months. I also got this Arbor Press. It's a small bench mount unit. It was cracked. Not sure how it got cracked or where it got cracked, but my granddad did a repair on it and mounted it to a really heavy base. The base probably weighs as much as the Arbor Press itself does. But that'll be nice just if I need to do any pressing for anything. Picked up an Anvil. It's probably, not sure exactly the weight on it. It's somewhere in the 80 to 120 pound range, I'm guessing, just based on how heavy it is to lift. I think it's heavier. My dad thinks it's lighter. He thinks it's about the weight of an 80-pound bag of concrete. I think it's a little bit more than my 100-pound weight set down in the basement. So but it's somewhere in that range. One person can move it by themselves. I got an old Kodak slide projector. I've got a bunch of slides that I actually want to transfer to digital and make a kind of a home movie out of it. My grandparents had slides for their 50th wedding anniversary, and there's also notes in there that they read as they did the slide presentation. So I want to redo that kind of in a video format, just for some family history. I think that'd be kind of cool. I got a later model sander grinder unit that takes the 1-inch wide sanding strips. It's also a Craftsman. It's much newer than some of these other things, but it's still old enough that it's all pretty heavy-duty steel. So I'm guessing that's probably 70s vintage would be my guess. I got some corner clamps that are new, but my dad didn't want them anymore. He'd picked those up a couple of years ago for a project he was working on. So those aren't antiques, anything special. Got a couple task lamps, a black one and a white one. We'll put those up. Probably one in my wife's sewing room, one in the workshop, just for general task illumination. Again, those aren't super old. I'm guessing probably 70s vintage would be my guess. I got a wood vise that I'm not sure exactly what the vintage is on it. It is probably, I'm guessing, 50s vintage. I got a old manual blowtorch. That ought to be kind of fun for the museum shelf. Gonna go along with these. I'll probably clean it up a little bit, but I don't really anticipate using that. Propane torches are so much easier to use these days. I got a vacuum pump. I have no idea what the condition is on that or really anything about it. I don't know when my granddad picked it up or what he used it for, but I figured that'd be a handy thing to have around the shop. A couple T-squares, nothing of particular note there. Those are relatively new. My dad bought those in the 80s, I think. I got an old microscope that my granddad had and a bunch of books. And really the big unit is the Jigsaw and the mounting base that my granddad made for it. Those are pretty heavy. I'm guessing the mounting base is probably upwards of 80 to 100 pounds. And the saw itself is probably, again, I'm guessing probably over 100 pounds based on what it takes to lift it. It's all cast iron. Again, a Craftsman, vintage, probably the mid to late 50s. So I got some sheet aluminum that my dad had lying around the place that he didn't have any need for anymore. So I brought that home for just to have stock on hand for various projects. And then I got a box over there of small hand tools and books. I'll go over those in the workshop down below after I get out of the wind and where it's a little bit more quieter. Got a bunch of books in here. Gas and welding, how to use power tools, just some old things. Pattern making book. That ought to be kind of interesting to peruse through. This is some project templates that Granddad had lying around. One thing that I got, I think some of it's in here, was the guts of a clock. This is the pattern for the case. A couple of articles on miscellaneous things in and around the workshop, making some tools and sharpening. Just articles my dad had pulled out. Just old magazine, Science Mechanics, Home Workshop. Book on basics of welding. I'd like to get into welding here in the relatively near future, so I thought that'd be a good text to just kind of read up on. Directions for a water level. The water level is in here somewhere. Probably the most interesting thing in here is a Multiset library on machine shop practices. So there's, I think there's eight volumes in here. Going from machine shop work and pattern making and foundry work and tool making and metallurgy, blueprint reading, mechanical drawing. Try to put this up so it's readable here. And a whole set of 8 books. Put it like that, so you can probably read those titles. That'll be interesting to kind of go through and see what's in there. Grandpa was a self-taught machinist, and so this will be interesting to kind of go through those. I think there's some markings in there, things that he made, notes that he took, things like that. Just some string. Dad probably threw it in there at the last minute. Some wood shop project and idea books, sheet metal shop practice book, more shop machining workbook. This one was precision measurement and gauging techniques. Again, that'll be interesting, just kind of go through and look at. And I'm not sure what this is. Machine shop operations. Oh, this is in the same series as that 8 series book, same manufacturer, but just more information on how to do machine work. That was some lathe tool grinding stuff and cutting threads and more machine work for the lathe. So this will be really good to be going through and getting that information. I'm really looking forward to that. Making whirly gigs, another book. This is a faceplate for that old lathe that I brought home with me. Just kind of complete that kit. Band clamp that Dad had lying around. This is just an aluminum project box. Again, just miscellaneous stuff. Put that in the project stuff. Somehow somehow I got all these screws. They're miscellaneous sheet metal screw, or not sheet metal, machine screws that Dad had around. Again, I thought that had gotten left there at Dad's, but apparently it got migrated to my box. Some sanding belts for that grinder. Oh, this is I was actually looking for one of these, and I got two of them. These are solvent containers, so they're completely contained for solvent, so you don't have fumes in the shop, but they have measured metering valves here. Go like that. You can get just a measured amount to put on a rag or something. So I got two of those. This is one that Granddad had actually, something had happened to the bottom. I think they're made out of brass, so usually they're impervious to chemicals. Something apparently happened to the bottom because the bottom had been cut out and Grandpa had soldered in a new base. The other one is in its original condition. These are probably vintage 50s or so. There's another one buried in there. Okay, this is an interesting piece. This is the optics out of a Norton Gun Sight. Grandpa, after the war, found a Norton Gun Sight at a surplus store and had taken apart just to see how it worked. And this is all that remains of that one that he took apart. Machining on this is pretty amazing. It has a mirror, some optics that go through. It looks like there's a prism inside here that things bounce around through. And I've never really investigated. I don't really know exactly how they work. Dad mentioned that when they got close to target, the control of the plane was actually transferred to the bombardier, and he guided the plane in through the Norton bomb sight. And the bomb sight apparently was somehow connected to the avionics on the plane. And those planes all had mechanical, they didn't even have hydraulics. They were all cable driven, going to all the control surfaces on the plane. So apparently this was some sort of kind of big mechanical computer that the gun sight was connected to the cables controlling the plane, and the bombardier just kind of guided it in. That was kind of one of the secret weapons of World War II for the Allies. So that was kind of interesting. I just got that for the old museum shelf. Kind of an interesting piece. I'll clean it up a little bit. It's a little dusty and stuff, so I'll take some toothpicks to it, or Q-tips to it, and clean it up, and it'll be kind of interesting to look at. It'll probably inspire me to go look at the Wikipedia page for Norton Gun Sight just to see how they really operated. As I proceed to dump things all over the place. This is just a fluid level for hook up to a garden hose. You can hook a garden hose up in between these to to get things level between two distant points. Like if you're trying to get a fence level across a large distance outside in the garden area or something. Put water in it, connect a garden hose in between. Well, the water seeks its own level on both sides, and so the top of the water will be at the same level regardless of how far apart these are. Kind of cool little instrument. Very simple. And I just dumped a whole bunch of screws and nuts and things all over through the box. Important things in here are these screws. They hold the jigsaw to the base that Grandpa made. Some drill bits with countersinks. More books these are all electronics books. Oscilloscope, solid state electronics, motor control circuits, experimental circuits, just things to play around with, increase general knowledge. A couple inspirational signs Dad had, and apparently somehow they managed to make it in here. This one talks about requirements being important. 2 out of 3 isn't good enough. And this one says, on the plains of hesitation bleached the bones of countless missions, who at the dawn of victory sat down to rest, and while resting, died. A couple books that I actually have on my reading list, and so now I don't have to go out and buy them. Good to Great and Built to Last, both by James Collins. Those are things I've been wanting to read. That'll be some good. Put that on the end table in the bedroom. Read before going to bed. Shaper, Sureform, I think is what they call them. It's basically just a wood rasp on a plain type handle system. These are really handy. sometimes when you're doing rough forming of wood. Here's a small hand plane that needs a little bit of refurbished work. It's a little rusty. Just kind of clean that up and put that on the shelf with the other planes to work with. A Spokeshave. Dad's had this forever. Just needs a little bit of cleanup and have a new edge put on it. It'll hurt you if you're not careful, but it's not very sharp for woodworking at the moment. So that needs to be cleaned up. I think you saw in the earlier part of the video the slide projector. These are a bunch of slides that need to go through and sort and take a look at. A brace for drilling holes by hand. Another hand drill. Sometimes these are handy if you need more control than you get with an electric drill. Slow speed, things where you can see what's going on. Here's another one of those solvent containers. The interesting thing about this, and I didn't realize this until I was taking a closer look at these actually have different throws on them, so you can get different amounts of measured liquid. This one is a smaller volume amount on the release. The first one did. And here you can see the size difference between the two. The one that Grandpa repaired is probably about an inch shorter than the standard one. Again, I was looking for these online a number of months ago and I wasn't able to find any. So I don't know if they don't make them or if I just didn't know what to search for. Some hair trimmers, old manual ones. Again, just for the museum. There's a hole cutter for the brace. This is an interesting tool. One of those that if you need it, you need this specific tool, but you probably rarely need it. I'll just put it on the shelf for the future possibilities. It's actually a sheet metal crimping tool designed to crimp the edges of sheet metal for when working with ductwork. So I don't do really much ductwork. I've done one small project around the house, but you know, Dad didn't have a need for it. He was going to throw it away if I didn't take it. I figured I'd save it from the dustbin. Oh, and here's the innards for that clock I was telling you about that Grandpa had. The bag looks like it's unopened from the manufacturer. You can see in there all the bits and gears and spring, and there's a pendulum for it. A couple pieces of plexiglass, just to have on hand, for the scrap pile. This is for sharpening chisels and plane blades. You run it across your stone and it keeps it at a consistent angle. I think these are some impact drivers. So you can hit this on the end with a hammer and it will impart a rotational force to help kind of break things loose if they're tightened up. And these are high strength bits to go with it, because you can break bits if it's not designed for this kind of use. Another rasp type device for forming wood with a spare blade. A handle for safety razor blades. All the blades I have are handles where you scrape like this. This allows you to scrape kind of sideways. Figure that'd be kind of handy to have hanging on the wall. A putty knife. Actually, this is an ink knife. Grandpa was a printer, so he uses for putting ink on the press. Nutcracker. This will split hex nuts if they put the hex nut in there and tighten this down until it comes off the bolt. Another book. This is on the Lord's Prayer by Philip Keller. I enjoy him as an author. I haven't read that book of his, so I thought I'd grab it. Cutter for a milling machine. Can be used in the lathe also. Dad doesn't have any tools that he can use that in, so I got that. Okay, you may not be able to see this real well. Let's see if that can focus on that. But that's it's shaped the way handset type was shaped. So it would go in line with those things. But it has etched on the front of it the Lord's Prayer. That's just kind of a curiosity from the printing industry. Tape measure with double-sided tape on one side to stick it to the workbench top. Wrench for something, I have no idea what that's for or how that made it in there. A whetstone, very fine grade, needs to be cleaned off, but that's for like putting a final polish on a honing a blade. Miscellaneous 9-volt connectors, put that in the electronics bin. A bunch of bolts for different things, I'm not sure what. Some bolts for cars, specialty bolts for I've got a Skylark. I've got a 65 Buick Skylark that's for. Some more miscellaneous car parts. More slides. Oh, these are the notes. These are the notes for my grandparents' 50th wedding anniversary slide presentation that they did. And so it has it organized by title and what it is and what they were saying and who was saying it. So I really want to go through and kind of redo that as a video just for family history purposes. Units and Machining of Metal. It's a book primarily of machining metal and how to do measurements while machining. Ought to be kind of interesting to go through and learn about. A deburring device, and the rest are all just miscellaneous small parts that fell out of the bins. This is an on-off switch plate that my dad had made, oh gosh, long time ago. Never actually finished the project that he was using it on, but thought it'd be kind of fun to use for something. Polish up the brass, and should look nice for some project. And that's it for this box. Well, now I need to find a place for all this stuff in the workshop. As you saw, I have a wide variety of interests, from machining to electronics and things in between. If workshop and house projects of this nature are things that you're interested in, I encourage you to subscribe, and I'll see you again in the next video. Until then, go make something. Perfection's not required.